Today, we are highlighting director Richard Kane's film documentary, I Know a Man, Ashley Bryan. When you see Ashley Bryan creating his art, it's like watching a kid in a candy store. Other people surrounding him also get uplifted as well just by following his lead. Here is an excerpt from his award-winning book, Beautiful Blackbird.
Blackbird said, "Color on the outside, it's not what's on the inside. You don't act like me. You don't eat like me. You don't get down in the groove and move your feet like me. But come tomorrow." Anyway, that's Ashley. And it's a beautiful message. It's a beautiful message celebrating diversity and how important it is. And later on he says, after he puts a touch of black on each one of the birds, he says, "We'll see the difference a touch of black can make. Just remember, whatever I do, I'll be me and you'll be you." So everybody's different and everybody has value. I think that's one of his great messages.
Yes, it is. How did you come across Ashley Bryan?
Well, we started, this is part of a series called Maine Masters. Mm-hmm. I have presented it to American Public Television in Boston. They are a syndicator and they market public television programming to all the 365 public television affiliates. And they would like our series, they would like to present our series to all the affiliate stations. Nice. It's complicated, it takes money, it takes errors and omissions insurance, it's a long process. So we have to raise money in order to make that happen. But really? So once we make that happen, it's no longer the Maine Master Series, it'll be the Great American Artists Series.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Because these are great American artists. I mean, some of the greatest artists in our American history came out of Maine. I mean, Georgia O'Keeffe was in Maine, Marsden Hartley, John Marin, Andrew Wyeth. I mean, it's just littered. And it's because Maine, it has such a beautiful landscape, including the sea, mm-hmm. as well as it's a wonderful lifestyle. So artists are really attracted to Maine. I remember the first episode in the series was about a man named Robert Hamilton. And he said the thing that he loved about working in Maine was that it was never too hot to paint, and you could always find a parking spot.
Nice.
He was a very funny guy. He taught painting at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design,
nice.
for many years, and he was a fighter pilot.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so Maine is a wonderful place, and it's got a long history of artists. So Ashley Bryan first came across Maine in 1946. Mm-hmm. He was at Cooper Union College, which was free at the time.
Yep.
And it was free until just a few years ago. When
You're kidding. Free college?
Free college. And that's the only way Ashley could have gone to school. I mean, he was living in a tenement apartment in the Bronx, mm-hmm. With 5 brothers and sisters and 3 cousins and his mother and father. So there were 11 of them in this small apartment. Mm-hmm. You know, they were a poor family. And in high school, he was one of the few black kids in his school, in his class, Theodore Roosevelt High School in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. And he was clearly the excelling art student. So he tried to get a scholarship to go to college, to go to art school, and nobody was interested. So his teachers said, you should apply to the Cooper Union because they do not see you there. In other words, they wouldn't know that he was black. Mm-hmm. And when he would take a test, it was in the Great Hall, the famous Great Hall of the Cooper Union, yeah. And they would do different exercises in clay and drawing, and they would leave their work on the tray, and they would put it up on the platform, and then the professors, after all the kids would leave, doing their submission test, they would select who they thought were the best artists, and Ashley was selected. So now that was in around 1940 or so, and then Ashley was drafted into World War II to the all-black army. It was a segregated army at the time.
Wow.
And he spent time in World War II as a stevedore, a dock worker. And Ashley knew nothing about docks. He knew nothing about winches and hauling up tanks and armaments and rifles and clothing and everything that needed to be shipped across to Europe.
Yeah.
The stevedores would, raise them up and bring them across. And Ashley was only interested in art and poetry. He was the strangest person to ever be in a war because he was such a peace-loving person.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it was at a time when, everybody was going to war and recognized that evil in the world existed, and we had to do something to defeat it. So Ashley went to war, and then when he came back, he completed his degree at Cooper Union, and in 1946, he was given a fellowship, a scholarship, to spend the summer at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, which was in its first year in 1946.
Wow.
So that's when Ashley first came to Maine in 1946, and then took off, exploring Maine, and that's, during his weekend breaks with his fellow students. And that's when he found Little Cranberry Island, which is where he still lives today. But he didn't move there. He would summer there every year. And then finally in 1981, he moved there full time. And so I came to know Ashley in 2007 when he gave a performance at our local opera house, the Stonington Opera House. And he gave a performance of this book, Beautiful Blackbird.
Right.
Which, we can talk about if you'd like. And because Ashley was well known in Maine and as a children's book author, published by Simon & Schuster, he's well known through libraries and schools all around the country and in South Africa and elsewhere around the world.
Right.
So I documented his performance at the Stonington Opera House of Beautiful Blackbird.
Nice.
And that's when I first came across Ashley. But we didn't decide to make the film until maybe 4 or 5 years later, when I was approached by Henry Isaacs, who's a very close friend of Ashley's, and a great painter himself, who was also a neighbor, and now lives in part in Portland, Maine. And Henry was aware of the film series that I produce along with my collaborator, Robert Shetterly, and who we're beginning to make a film about now. So that's how we came to start the project and came to meet Ashley. His performance at the Stonington Opera House was astounding, but it was later on, maybe 5 years later, he gave another performance. I mean, he gives performances all the time, but he was giving a performance at the library in my hometown, Blue Hill, Maine.
Oh, nice.
And it was in the Howard Room. It's the scene that's ultimately in the film. And it was just so jam-packed with people that kids were underneath my tripod. They had no place else to go. So I said, please, don't shake, don't move. And it was a wonderful performance, and that's the scene that makes it into the film.
Right, yeah, and he, you can tell that he's sort of like a teacher / storyteller. You can tell, it shows that he loves what he's doing. He loves to help people.
Absolutely, and I think the biggest message that comes across with Ashley, I mean, if you look at the film, and it's there are 3 versions of it. There's an hour and 15 minutes, an hour, and then a 32-minute for children. If you look at the film, and I kind of keep track of, well, how many messages does Ashley relate to us? It's just too numerable to keep track of. But the one message that might kind of rise to the top is about the importance of keeping the child alive in you. And you know, he doesn't just have an audience of children, although he is beloved by children.
Right.
It's really adults who appreciate his message, his ideas, and his art. But children are attracted to him as well.
Right.
But what does it really mean, you know, to keep the child alive in you? Well, I think it has a lot to do with, you know, children approach the world with wonder. They look up in the sky and they look at the clouds and they, you know, why is the sky blue and why are the clouds white? And they always are in wonder of the world. Well, Ashley is too. And he's in awe of the beauty of the world. And after his experience in World War II, with the racism that he experienced in the segregated army, and in the carnage of World War II, he was at D-Day. D-Day, the first day of D-Day, because they all brought in these big, you know, they brought in the Liberty ships to unload, so that the army that followed it would have all the equipment they needed to invade at Normandy. Right. So Ashley was there and witnessed this extraordinary carnage.
Yeah.
So his response to the carnage and racism was really to create beauty in the world and through his art. So, and I think it's a lot, the idea of keeping the child alive in you has a lot to do with, well, as I said, the awe and wonder in which children approach the world, but also it has to do with something that is called receptivity, openness. You know, we talk about being open-hearted.
Right.
Well, Ashley really opens his heart to all the world, to anyone he comes across, to all, you know, of nature. It's a very beautiful kind of existence, and it has a lot to do with love. And he has a tremendous amount of love for anyone who he meets. I mean, if you go to his home on Little Cranberry Island, he'll open the door, he'll come to the door and say, "Welcome, come in." And he just gives you a tour of his home, and he talks to you about his life. And another thing I think, well, that is another big message, has to do with his, how he's a champion of democratic art. And this is really demonstrated by the puppets that he makes. He is an extraordinarily diverse artist. I mean, he makes puppets, he does paintings, he makes sea glass windows, he does these children's books and writes the stories and illustrates them, sometimes in watercolors, sometimes in cutouts, like Matisse did cutouts. Well, these just an example. These are cutouts. It's not his. You know, all of these birds are made out of cutouts.
Yeah.
And he does these lino cuts. He carves into linoleum blocks and he creates these prints. And but his message is, you know, he's African American. If you didn't get that, and he's really his puppets demonstrate, you know, the diversity of these imaginary, human-like, but they're not human-like puppets. They're all so unique, and I said that he was a champion of democratic art. Well, that has to do with, you know, using materials that are completely without great value. I mean, they're all found objects that wash up on the shore, and he walks the shores of Cranberry Island, and he picks up fishermen's gloves and old pieces of sweaters and stew bones, and he creates an enormous cadre of puppets.
Right.
And I think that has a lot to do with his appreciation and love for the diversity of humanity.
Yes.
And it's
yeah, when
America.
I saw his puppets, and they are so cute, and I was looking at, I'm looking at the eyes of one of the puppets, and it looked, kind of like something else, but when I looked closer, it was shells with the slits in them. Like, oh my God, you know what I mean? That is just so great that he could put it all together. They were really cute, those puppets.
And those are mussel shells that have this kind of oblong shape, and it's the diversity of America that he's celebrating in a way with those, or the diversity of all of humanity. The great theologian Martin Buber talked about how we are all kin in this world. We're all related in some way. And if we're all related, then how could there be war? It doesn't make sense that there would be war if we're all kin.
It kind of it makes you feel good watching it, and you know what I mean? It really does, like, something other than, like I said before, keeping up with the Joneses, you know what I mean? You're right, all the other media is about that kind of thing, and this one here just, like you said, it's humanity, and that's, I think that's something to be celebrated because there's so little of it nowadays. But, you can't buy it. You know what I mean? You can't buy that. You can't buy that humanity. Do you know what I'm saying? That shows up in your films. You know what I'm saying?
But I think that most of the world is looking for reality TV, and what could be more real than documentaries? But the kind of reality TV that we have today is about celebrating fame and glory. And American Idol, and I think we should, and I don't think that Ashley would want to be idolized in any way. He's just a common person, but he's got extraordinary talents, and I think that he wants to nurture that creativity in him, and that's what I was talking about before, being receptive and open. I think that's the key to being creative.
Yeah. Now, he was a professor at Dartmouth. Is that right?
Ashley was a professor at Dartmouth, and he was head of the art department there.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, it was interesting because we made a film about David Driscoll, who's another great African American artist, scholar, curator. And we were in Philadelphia. Well, we shot a scene with David Driscoll, who's a friend of Ashley Bryan. They're both in Maine.
Yeah.
David Driscoll, although, is in New York and Washington D.C. as well. But we shot a scene with a curator from the National Gallery of Art, Ruth Fine, who was a curator at National Gallery of Art for 30 years. And when we interviewed her in her Philadelphia apartment about David Driscoll, I looked on the wall and I see, hey, there's a drawing by Ashley Bryan. So I said, oh, you know Ashley Bryan? She said, he was a professor of mine at Dartmouth College.
Wow.
So very interesting how, all these worlds, between curators and artists and people in Maine and Skowhegan, they all connect.
Now, what was it, Scotland, Glasgow? Was there a school in Glasgow, Scotland that he went to?
Oh, Glasgow?
Yes.
Well, that's in Scotland, and that's when he went across, the Atlantic on his way to World War II, and his battalion was stationed for a period of time. I'm not sure how long, just a few months, I think, in Glasgow. And he asked his battalion commander if he could attend the art school in Glasgow, and his commander gave him permission to do that. I guess they were making preparations for the invasion at Normandy.
Wow.
And he had some time off, and so he made friends there.
So there's a center. Where's the center?
The Ashley Bryan Center is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Oh,
and
wow.
its purpose is to preserve Ashley's art and his legacy.
Right.
It's similar in a way to the purpose of the film. The purpose of the film is to expand the knowledge that people have of Ashley in the world. Mm-hmm. So and the film getting out into the world, it's to the great benefit of the Ashley Bryan Center, who's interested in raising money to preserve the works of Ashley, to extend his influence by distributing his books to schools and elsewhere. So it could be a great symbiotic relationship, and that's what I'm working to create. The film has shown at the American Library Association annual conference just a few weeks ago in Chicago, where Ashley was honored for his latest book. At the age of 93, he published a new book called Freedom Over Me.
What is the name of it?
It's called Freedom Over Me, and it's an extraordinary book. He got a Coretta Scott King Award and a Newbery Honor and a Caldecott Award. Mm-hmm. So there were these banquets and breakfasts and all that honoring Ashley, and Ashley was there. Mm-hmm. And the film was shown there as well. So we're hoping that the film gets out to all the libraries in the country and elsewhere. There are 25,000 librarians who go to that conference.
Really?
But the Freedom Over Me is an absolutely extraordinary book. Ashley, here it is.
Yep.
And Ashley went to an auction in Northeast Harbor, which is just at the docks where you get off the mailboat from Ashley's home. Mm-hmm. And so he went to an auction there, and he found a stack of 27 or so documents from the slave trade. And one of them was a bill of sale of slaves that were being sold by the Fairchild plantation, or Fairfield plantation, not sure which. And there were 11 slaves that were being sold, and the only information on that bill of sale was the price and the name of the slave. Mm-hmm. So from that very slim information, Ashley created portraits of each one of these people, and he gave them ages. He kind of tried to figure out, well, this person was female and a certain age, a certain price, then they would be a certain age. If they were male and a certain price, they would be a certain age. So he created stories from what he knew about slavery, and he created, relationships between them, the importance that each one of these people had to the running of the plantation, whether they be basket makers or iron workers or cotton pickers or whatever they were, work in the kitchen, cooks, and so he created this whole life on the plantation, and the whole idea of this book is that you can take a person's freedom away, but you can never take their dreams away. Right. And the book is chilling. It just gives you goosebumps when you read it. So he's got all these awards for this book, and it's a very beautiful book. I'll show it again. Freedom Over Me. It's published by Athenaeum Books, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Very beautiful book. And Ashley obviously is very interested in the whole history of slavery. And he wrote a book years ago called Walk Together, Children. Mm-hmm. And in it, it's all about Black American spirituals. And he creates these lino cuts. Yep. I think this one says, "Let my people go." Yes. So it has a lot of the imagery of the Exodus and about slavery, and all of these songs. I mean, they Go Down Moses, Mary Had a Baby, Didn't My Lord deliver Daniel? Just hundreds and hundreds, and actually thousands of songs that were written by Deep River, that were written by Walk Together Children, Go Down Moses. All these spirituals were written by black slaves. But if you go into church and you go to the hymnal and you open them up, they'll all say traditional. They won't say Black American spirituals. So Ashley published this book and a second volume to celebrate the creativity and these beautiful songs by American slaves.
Right.
So that's another that is in the film, and Ashley talks about it. And it's the one place in the film where he really gets choked up because it meant so much to him.
Right.
He went through or experienced from afar, fortunately, Hiroshima and Nagasaki dropping of the atom bomb, and that he said that did it. And that point on, he devoted his life to beauty and joy and wonder.
Yes, yeah, and he went to Columbia University and studied philosophy. Is that right?
Exactly. When he came back from Europe, he finished his art degree with Skowhegan, and then in order to kind of try to understand why man chooses war, he went to Columbia to get another degree, undergraduate degree in philosophy. And
That's
he said
a very prestigious college, Columbia.
Yeah, well, he was quite erudite, very obviously very intellectual and very smart, and he became a professor at Dartmouth College. I mean, so he's someone to listen to. Yes. And to experience. And I think that through the film, you really get to know Ashley, quite well. So I hope everybody gets a chance to see it.
Yes. Is it
Ashley Bryan Films. I want to tell everybody about the website, ashleybryanfilms.org.
Oh, really? ashleybryanfilms.org?
Yes, Ashley, A-S-H-L-E-Y, Bryan, B-R-Y-A-N, Films. Okay. FILMS.org. Check it out, and the film is not yet for sale except to libraries. Libraries can purchase copies now, but not to the general public unless you go to one of the screenings. I'm trying to remember. There's some screenings coming up in August in Maine. Yep. Schoodic Arts for All in Winter Harbor, Maine on August 6th, and Lighthouse Arts in Bucksport, Maine on August 12th, and then it continues. In September,
are you going to put it in the Arlington International Festival? Are you going to enter it into that or no?
Yes, and I believe that's October.
Yes, yeah.
I'm hoping that it gets into the festival there too.
Great.
We speaking of which, we had a great opportunity to work with a woman from Arlington, Marga Barea, who's been a godsend for this film and many others. But she's an outreach director, and she's opened up the door to many organizations and universities, colleges, universities, libraries, organizations, to know more about Ashley Bryan Films.org. So just a kudos to Marga Barea, who lives in the Boston area.
Nice.
Okay, Bernadette, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.